Just another beautiful day, stuck in the rain as usual, since it being rainy season where I live and stuff. Anyhow, so this is Scoreless. I'm here to, I'm in like one of the best aquariums in Bangalore. It's called Splashy Fin, and yeah, they've got a huge variety of species, and are basically just a really cool shop in general. And yeah, I'm here to do a vlog about them. Just one of gonna be the first vlog I ever create, and it's gonna be about this place. So yeah, this is how it looks. It's a lot bigger on the inside than I mean from the outside. So they've got this massive tank full of Malawi chicklets. I'm assuming, like, I don't know anything about chicklets. But inside over here, they've got these Pacu piranhas as well. Like, look at these guys. Yeah, they're from the Charas. They're a kind of charasin fish, which is basically a fancy word for saying that they're a kind of tetra. I mean, piranhas are kind of tetras, to be honest. Like, you know, the cute schooling kind neon tetras, they're actually closely related to the fearsome red-footed piranhas from the Amazon. But the thing that sets Pacus apart from regular piranhas is that these guys are actually vegetarians. So yeah, they have a habit of like eating nuts that fall down from trees into the river, which also like gives rise to certain anecdotes involving them accidentally castrating the guys that walk through the river because of their diet. And if you take a look at a Pacu's teeth, they're incredibly human-like, which is super damn creepy. And speaking of chicklets, like, look at this guy. Look at this guy. So yeah, chicklets are one of a very diverse family of fish. They can be divided into like two kinds of chicklets. South American and African chicklets. Like, and the most common species of chicklet you'll find stored in aquaria are the scalar in Pteroptilum scalar angelfish, like, which is basically like, you know, the usual angelfish that you see. They're actually a kind of South American chicklet. Their home range is like South America, but more on them later. Speaking of these guys, they're one of the most intelligent species of fish on the planet, and yeah, it is evidenced by the high amount of parental care they provide to their young in the form of like mouth brooding, which basically means that after their fry hatch, they are basically allowed to romp around, and when trouble arises, they dive right into their mom or dad's mouth as protection against like the predators and stuff. And you also got this pleco just vibing right over here. Pleco are pretty like interesting fish as well, given that they're an invasive pest in some places where they're introduced. And a thing about plecos that is very unique are basically their eyes. Like, they've got this thing called the omega iris, which basically like filters out the light and gives them their own dimming feature in their light. And the sexual dimorphism, coming back to the chicklets, their sexual dimorphism is pretty varied amongst their species, since like there are certain species of like shell dwelling chicklets that the female is like up to 32 times smaller than the male, since the male has to like gather these shells and stuff in order to like provide the optimal nesting environment for the female. And the male's gotta be big in order to like collect the shells, and the female's gotta be small enough to lay eggs in them. So yeah, chicklets are pretty cool. They're ranked pretty high on the evolutionary tree, and they also gave rise to the. And a weird fact is that scientists have conducted experiments on chicklets, proving that fish are able to feel some kind of rudimentary emotional connection to each other. Like, chicklet species, they can be either monogamous or polygamous, means like they can stick with either one mate, like death do them part kind of way, or either that, or they can be like have multiple mates at once. But scientists have conducted like a series of experiments on female chicklets, proving that they have like lesser degree of optimism when it comes to future events when they're separated from their mates. So yeah, these guys can feel love. They're also like pretty aggressive fish, and they can be found in like, coming to the African cichlids, they can be found in like four different kind of lakes. But Lake Malawi, which houses like the most amount of cichlids houses a lot of more amount of cichlids than any other when it comes to like cichlid diversity. And yeah, there's, well, most of them are freshwater, like heck, all of them are freshwater, with the exception of one, which lives in a particular lake, which can survive salinity higher than the ocean. The freaking ocean, these guys can thrive in it. And yeah, they're basically geniuses when it comes to intelligence. I haven't said this enough. And they're one of the smartest fish species. If you keep them as pets, they're highly interesting to watch. And yeah, coming to the other species. Okay, another bunch of cichlids over here. These are convex cichlids, I'm assuming, by the look of them. They look pretty young though, since, well, they're small in size. And over here you've got a bunch of baby goldfish. Look at them, they're like little nuggets. Look, they're so freaking cute, it's almost unbelievable. It's gonna flood towards the light right here. And yeah, goldfish don't exactly look like that, but they've got a pretty rich history to them. For instance, like they're one of the most like common pets around the world that have been sold the most. And yeah, they're famous for like dying, although they're famous for dying almost immediately after they've been sold. These guys can live for up to like an extremely long time, and their vision is also pretty good. Like humans have an only 3 color vision spectrum, but goldfish on the other hand, they can see up to 4 colors. Like that includes ultraviolet light that humans aren't able to. And goldfish also have a better sense of smell than humans, owing to like their sense of smell being in sync with their inner ears and their swim bladder. So yeah, they're basically smelling in 4D, if that's a thing. And yeah, they're also like related to carp, but more on the koi later. So yeah, goldfish are pretty cool. But although even though they look pretty harmless, like they aren't to be released in the wild, since they become invasive pests like the plecos pretty quickly. Although I should reduce the flash. So yeah, goldfish skin in reality is actually the colored part. Their scales are clear, and their skin hosts chromatophores, which give them their orange yellow color. And yeah, deficit of like and these chromatophores are basically like fueled by what's it called again? UV rays. So if a fish is deficient of UV rays, it's more likely that the goldfish are going to turn white afterwards. And yeah, these fish, like contrary to the popular belief and like what is like marketed in pop culture, you aren't supposed to keep them in a small bowl. They need like at least 20 gallons to each fish, since they grow to be pretty freaking huge, with some species of goldfish like getting up to the size of a football. And their like bioloads are super high, which means that yeah, they're constantly pooping. Like look at the noodle coming out of this guy. So and yeah, they can live up to 20 years in a breeze, with like the longest lived goldfish, I forgot its name, but it was recorded to living something just above like 40 years of age. And these guys are fighting, never mind, they broke up. So yeah, speaking of goldfish, they can be pretty freaking huge, getting to the size of footballs and stuff. But most goldfish aren't going to reach that kind of stage, since goldfish are what they call like most aquatic animals, like fish or like lobsters and stuff. They're intermittent growers, which means that they keep growing all the time until like, I mean, there is a thing that they grow up to the size of their container, but yeah, this fish is this is partly true, but the fish is gonna get a super stunted growth if you keep it in a super small container. So yeah, due to this reason, the closely related koi is not a worthy candidate of being kept inside at all, like in a what's it called, a bowl or even a tank for that matter. They're gonna be kept in outdoor pools. And this misconceptive practice of the fishbowl generally actually originated somewhere around I don't remember what time, but it was in Rome. And yeah, I think I should move to the other fish at this point. Over here you've got mollies. Mollies, the black mollies. Mollies are kind of live bearer, which means that they give birth to live young and do not lay eggs. They're basically viviparous. And yeah, they give birth to fry pretty often, except they eat their own young, unlike chicklets, instead of providing parental care, which gives the fry word another meaning because they just gobble them up like Pop-Tarts. There's a species of molly which is pretty interesting, called the Amazonian molly, which the Amazon molly, which is basically one of the few asexual vertebrates that are present. So yeah, Amazon mollies are able to they reproduce by gynogenesis, which basically means that they're able to mate with similar species of fish. Although after mating, the egg rapidly degrades the sperm and another female fish hatches. So they basically clone each other. But yeah, mollies are pretty darn cute looking fish. They're closely related to guppies and platies and other live bearers such as swordtails. Yeah, the platies and the swordtails are right over here. Swordtails are named because the males often have this kind of thing. Highly elongated this one just swam by. A highly elongated fin stemming from its caudal region. And that's all I've got to say about them. The thing about these live bearers are they involve another species of fish called a half-beak. And with the exception of them, most mollies, guppies, platies can reproduce with each other, resulting in various hybrids. So yeah, here you've got the platies. Platies are pretty interesting fish. They are also come from live bearer family. Look at these guys just lying around. And yeah, they're bred to have various different color morphs, such as these guys right over here. Sorry about my camera quality. My camera's trash. You got these little snails just sticking to the glass of this. There are no fish in this one. Okay, up next we've got the tiger barb. Tiger barbs are basically kind of barb, and barbs are called this way because they're also a cyprinid fish, which means that they're closely related to goldfish. I mean, they come from the family of carp, which involves goldfish, minnows, and stuff. But what sets these guys apart is that they've got barbels around their mouths, which help them sniff stuff out. If you look at these guys closely, you're gonna see the barbels. I mean, koi have them too. And fun fact, goldfish and koi can hybridize with each other, but the barbels present near the carp's, the resulting offspring's mouth often can give away its carp heritage. So yeah, these guys, I have no idea what they are. I'm so sorry. Again, tiger barbs, they can be found in various color morphs. The ones over there were a bit greenish tinged, if you might have noticed, while these ones are just plain orangey kind of colored, which is their natural coloration. So yeah. Speaking of color morphs, over here you see these tubelite kind of guys. They're called zebra danios. They're also a kind of cyprinid fish, to be completely honest. They're kind of minnow. And Yeah, these guys, they're used in labs a lot for like researches. They're usually their coloration in the wild. This one over here. Oh, this one right here. This is what they look like in the wild. They're like dull blue in color and have like stripes running horizontally, hence the name, the zebradanios. And they're like they said share 70. They're pretty important when it comes to like scientific experiments, since they share like 70% of their DNA with humans and 80% of disease-causing genes with humans. So yeah, these guys, they're the first species of fish vertebrate that they're the first kind of vertebrate clone which was ever created. It was Zebradanio, and they're used in the pre-testing of drugs and toxicology tests and vaccine research, where it's conducted on these guys too. And yeah, they're basically kind of minnow, which means a small cyprinid. A lot of these minnows are pretty like used in fish bait and stuff, except like these guys as embryos, they have like a great regenerative capacity for like heart tissue, the CNS regeneration, as well as like photoreceptors. And the thing with these guys is that what makes them viable in lab research is that their embryos are pretty bulky and easy to work with. So yeah, and they're transparent as well, which gives an extra added advantage to scientists. And they can survive outside their mother, unlike the viviparous fish which I saw, like mollies, platies and stuff. They're all live bearers. Since these guys, they're externally fertilized. Their genome has been fully sequenced by scientists, and these, you may have noticed, like the zebradanio, the wild ones over here, like the ones at least that look like wild morphs, they're different from the glowfish right over here, which are bright neon in color. Well, these guys are actually patented glowfish. So they're genetically modified to glow under bright fluorescent light. Since the reason is that their genome has been tampered with, like not exactly tampered with, like modified by scientists to like introduce either a jellyfish or a coral protein into their thing, like their genome, which makes them glow brightly. The reason they invented this was not for fun, though, since they had to. The intention of their prime motive for creating glowfish was to release them in polluted waters, to like basically so that they're easier to see. The glowfish, they glow because they'll be easier to see. But the reason they introduced these fish was to like monitor stuff like environmental like pollutants, such as say environmental estrogens and stuff, which is like harmful for fish. But yeah, they've been trademarked, and there are a lot of colors to these guys. Like basically, they can be bright yellow, purple, pink, blue, like these ones right here. So yeah, they're pretty cute little and dandy little cyprinids. Although scientists have and pet companies have extended the reach of glowfish to a lot of different species of fish, like bettas and widow tetras. Another useful color, or rather colorlessness, are these transparent zebradanios that scientists have invented. Although they're nicknamed the Casper, although it's been like mostly used in like the development of research of cancerous tumors. And a fun fact about this fish, or like fish in general, is that they were one of the species used to like show that fish have a pain threshold, and like fish actually without like, since fish lack neocortexes, it's been like widely debated whether they actually feel pain or not. And like since, well, a lot of research has shown that on zebradanios has shown that they feel pain, and they also get drunk because they do. And for example, alcohol was introduced to zebradanios, and like once that were like drunk, like had lesser self-preservation instincts, and not being like less of they're like being less afraid of predators. And the real twist to the story comes that zebra dinos like drunken leaders way more than sober leaders, since they mistake the drunken bravado for actual bravery. So they have the drunk fish lead them. So yeah, there are various like variants of various variants of zebra dinosaurs. The leopard dino, which is actually just a different skin color, has just a different pattern than a regular zebra dino, as well as the white one, as well as they've also like created long fin varieties of these guys. Over here you've got a bunch of mollies. Yet again, they're just clustering right over here for no particular reason. And over here you've got a bunch of chiclets. I'm not sure what these guys are, since I do not know a lot about chiclets. But yeah. There's another pleco just sticking to the glass right over there. Another fact about Plecostomus is that they have like teeth right in the inner part of their mouth. I mean, fish do have teeth in pretty weird places. Like, for instance, goldfish have 3 teeth right in their throats. And yeah, these guys, they have teeth right in the inner part ridge of their mouth, which allows them to like scrape algae and stuff off the surface of glasses. And over here you have the opaline gouramis. So yeah, gouramis are basically a kind of labyrinth fish, which I mean they're anabanted fish. I'm so sorry. Which means that the bettas are also anabanted, which basically means that they possess a labyrinth organ, which allows them to like come to the surface of the water and like gulp water from there on. But yeah, bettas are kind of gourami. You know, Siamese filter fish you find at the discount stores, selling for like what, extremely throwaway prices. More on them later. But these guys, they've got these kind of feeler things right in the base of their thing, like they're modified anal fins, I'm supposing. Like, I'm not sure about that though. But these feelers, they contain taste buds, which allows for them to like taste their way around. So if you see gouramis like touching their feelers around, they're actually tasting their way around. Hello there. So yeah, that's what they do. And yeah, over here you see another goldfish. Contrary to the popular belief, I don't know, it looks kind of like I'm not very well versed with goldfish species or breeds, to be honest. And and there's another zebra dino right over here, and there's this widow tetra just hiding. I do not know why. I'm assuming this is like a no, not a. I should stop trying to find out which breed. But anyhow, another thing about goldfish is that they do not have a 3-second memory, unlike a lot of people believe. If that was the case, like it just pertains to certain parts of their visual memory and short-term memory. If that is truly the case, humans would have like a 10-second memory and cats would have like a 10-minute memory. But yeah, another thing about goldfish is that they produce they're actually descendants from this fish called a Prussian carp. And oh god, this guy's got something wrong with its swim bladder. So anyhow, coming back to the goldfish, they actually have a memory capacity way better than humans. Like, humans have an 8-second memory span, while goldfish beat them by like 1 second, which is not saying a lot. They have a 9-second memory attention span. And goldfish can also be trained like dogs, which is to like respond to bells and stuff. And there have been instances of like scientists training these guys. And wait 1 second. was saying, goldfish actually descend from this unassuming looking NPC of a fish called a Prussian carp, which is attributed to being the granddaddy of both carp as well as koi. These guys have an indoor koi pond right over here. I'm good more on them later. And you've got this swai fish, which is a kind of catfish, just chilling along with them for whatever reason. But yeah, these guys descend from Prussian carp, and goldfish weren't always destined to be pets. First, they were like created to be they were bred as like food fish. Like Prussian carp, they had nothing going for them except like being delicious. And yeah, what got them out of the cook pot to like becoming cherished pets is that one of the like Prussian carp were bred from this brownish colored fish, and eventually like adopted more goldenish kind of coloring as a result of a mutation. But these orange fish, like they were later what's it called again? They're one of the like earliest domesticated they're the most earliest domesticated fish. So a part of what led to their domestication was their orangish coloration. Notice how I said one of the first domesticated. We'll come on to the second fish, which is one of the earliest domesticated fish. And Prussian carp are basically what like they would look like. What goldfish would look like if they had like zero human interference. And they're golden because of the development of certain mutations, and they were eventually like selectively bred to give rise to goldfish and koi carps. And yeah, what's over here in this tank? Nothing. It's just this chicklet. This poor chicklet, just sleeping here at the back. Alright, over here we have the guppies. Guppies are once again the token child of being live bearer fish, and they're also closely related to endlers, which are like their scientific name is poly something reticulata, which means, and they've been bred from like one second, let me catch my breath. Yeah, the thing with these guys is that guppies are actually like have a highly complex social life despite like appearing pretty stupid like on every other level. And the way that they differ themselves, they assert their social position mainly comes through their eyes. And if you notice, some of the guppies here are way more brightly colored than the other. Well, actually, that's sexual dimorphism among these fish. Since like you'll notice that the males are way better colored than the females, and there's a lot more to like sexual dynamics between these fish than like originally thought. Since the males also possess like this modified anal fin, which is like common to all life bearers, which is called the gonopodium, which but guppies take it a step further by like having a sort of barb-like structure in the end of their gonopodium, which assists in like unconsenting coercion of females. Like they just come up to a female and like grape without the G her, and this assists in that by like locking into her genital core. And yeah, the thing is like being live bearers, and they actually come from a place like where chicklets, the ones over here, are the natural predators, and they're also the scientists. They're also like one of the fish that scientists use in their studies to like distinguish that fish have separate personalities traits, and like they aren't just like carbon copies of each other. Scientists placed a robotic chiclet puppet inside a tank full of guppies to put on a show for them and basically terrify them. And yeah, about the guppies. So scientists put on a horror show for these guppies involving a puppet of chiclet. And these puppets also terrified them, but they noticed that certain fish reacted differently than other fish. Some of them were way more scared than the others. So this meant that they may have distinguishing personality, but it wasn't proof enough for that. They tried this experiment a bit later, by horrifying them using the same puppets sometime later. And yeah, it led to the same result. The same individual fish reacted in the way that they had before. Some were more afraid than the others, and the bolder ones were bolder. And another notable feature about guppies is that their eyes, right over here, they're usually silver in color. I'm not sure about why these guys have all black eyes. Maybe they're just bred for that. But yeah, these eyes are super important for the defense mechanisms, as well as their the way that they interact with each other. For instance, black-eyed guppies, they're signifying aggression to each other. For example, scientists have used guppy puppets with black eyes. If a smaller guppy with black eyes shows up to a place where there are a lot of bigger, if a guppy with black eyes pulls up to a place where there are smaller guppies and some food, the guppy smaller than the black-eyed guppy will immediately back away from that place and let the black-eyed guppy eat their share. But if a smaller black-eyed guppy pulls up to a place with bigger guppies and food, they're gonna beat the crap out of the black-eyed guppy for being a punk and daring to use black eyes on them. So yeah, black eyes is not only a way to signify anger though. It's also a defensive strategy. For example, Trinidadian guppies, they use their black eyes to deflect attacks from the predators, chiclets, which basically jump out. They're ambush predators, so they hide in a place and wait for a guppy to swim by, and then as the guppy swims by, they're just gonna pounce on it. But guppies use their eyes as a contracting mechanism. They use their eyes as a contracting mechanism as they spot the chiclet, they flood their eyes with black. This draws more attention to their eyes than their body, their head region more than their body, which means that the chiclet is way more likely to strike at their head, which seems like a pretty terrible defense strategy. But there's more of a catch to this, since it allows for more wiggle room for the guppy to be able to turn around and flee in the event that it's struck on the head. And another thing about Trinidadian guppies is that they've evolved bigger sizes than other guppies to be able to flee more efficiently, since bigger sizes means easier opportunity for turning around. And yeah, they've got pretty interesting social dynamics considering their gender as well. As I said, guppies constantly are on the lookout to SA, the females, and this means that females are less likely, their bonds with each other are damaged, since they're chased by males pretty much all the time. And this has been evidenced by male guppies have been shown to choose a preference to water that gravid females have been in. Gravid means that they're about to give birth in. And yeah, female guppies with larger brains have been shown to have better mate selection. And guppy males help their brothers out by disrupting other males' performance, mating display performances, and helping theirs with their own. And yeah, this one's getting beaten up pretty bad. And yeah, female guppies spend up most of their lives on the run away from males, and they've invented a counteracting defense strategy, which involves like swimming into deeper waters where there are like predators on the prowl, and the duller colors mean that males are less likely to be able to come over there without being like eaten by a larger predator. So yeah, female guppies have been known to risk their lives in order to avoid male attention. And what's more to say about them? Yeah, they're pretty cool fish. And yeah, females also have been evolved to become better swimmers in order to like outswim other males. And yeah, what else do I have to say about them? They're let me just think a bit about it. I didn't exactly come with a script. I'm just shooting this because I happen to be here. And yeah, guppies are pretty cool. You'll see a lot more of them. These guys have such a cool indoor koi pond. It's kind of unbelievable in a good way. So over here you've got koi carp. Yeah, these guys, they're goldfish. They're closely related to goldfish, and they're also one of the largest ones on record. I've seen to grow like 4 feet and weigh up to 20 pounds. And the longest lived goldfish has been like traced to live for years, and it's 40. The longest lived koi carp has been shown to live up to like 2 centuries long. And yeah, the fish's age can be determined by the development of a particular kind of ring on its scales. I forgot what it's called. And counting those keeps track as to how old the fish is. And yeah, the reason they're kept in like outdoor ponds is that these guys can grow absolutely gargantuan in size, and they pollute the water a lot. So there's a species of like, there's a kind of coloration of koi called the platinum koi, which its striking coloration gives its look, to be able to like see it through murky waters. So yes, its size and longevity, which means that they can become like pretty invasive pests. And yeah, goldfish and carp hold quite a cultural significance. Like they've been tied to dragons, and yeah, the only competitor for this kind of draconic positioning of these fish is the arowana. They're also world hoppers, like goldfish and carp are world hoppers. Since their domestication began in China, but this practice was also taken up in Japan in the 19th century. And there's a thing about like koi. There's a Chinese legend that if a carp jumps over a waterfall, carp, that behavior is not natural in carp. Only salmon do that. But anyways, it's just a myth. Let's go with it. Its perseverance is rewarded and transforms into a dragon. I mean, the Chinese really have the love for their pets. Like there's there's immortalizing your pets, and then there's, look at this guy just giving smooches to him. So yeah, there's giving attention to your pet, and then there's just immortalizing them to become dragons. One of the most expensive breeds of koi, it's called a tancho. I mean, there's a similar kind of thing, similar to tancho, but it's basically, what is up with this one? This little fish is just pecking after him. Just keeps giving him smooches. So yeah, the tancho breed of koi resembles a Japanese flag and can be sold for up to $1,000, while yeah, the they like commoners were initially like not allowed to have goldfish, since yellow goldfish were what is this fish doing? Yeah, they were straight up banned from pheasants were straight up banned from having goldfish, since yellow was an imperial hue, and goldfish were and koi, they're also seen as signs of friendship. And yeah, the thing about Prussian carp as well as koi is that they're high survivability. For instance, in Russia and stuff with like cold regions, like the thing to remember about koi is that they're actually cold water fish. Like they thrive best in water areas that are cold. And yeah, I've got a favorite fish right here, the one that just keeps giving kisses to the others. Yeah, about these fish is that they're able to metabolize lactic acid and anaerobically transform it into alcohol, which they use to survive in like temperatures which are super cold. And what was I saying? Yeah, these guys, they live in the bot when they're like trapped in icy cold weather. Any like they don't die in the cold weather. Instead, they obtain energy by like to metabolize in this cold condition by converting the lactic acid produced in them into ethanol. They then I think diffuse it over their gills to avoid the buildup of lactic acid and channel carbohydrates into the mitochondria. Yeah, the freaking powerhouses which we've been studying about. Yeah, and they don't have just one mitochondria as a mechanism to be able to go through this kind of anaerobic respiration. They also use it to. Will this little guy leave the rest alone? They have like two sets of proteins used to go through this mechanism, like converting lactic acid into alcohol. This kind of thing has only been observed in brewer's yeast, and no other vertebrate has been seen to do so. And while Prussian carp, they do this kind of stuff, they while they do this, their blood alcohol levels can go over the drink driving limit of most northern European countries. And while they go through this booze-induced state, they hibernate. Like, it's not exactly true hibernation, they just go through a period of torpor. And yeah, they're so damn hardy that Prussian carp, the one which are like super duper, like the granddaddies of carps and goldfish, a part of their widespread and why they are pests is because they a contributing factor to this is that they are often eaten by waterfowl, their eggs, and their eggs also have the ability to survive the digestive tract of. Oh god, he's going after this one again. They have the ability to like survive the digestive tract of some waterfowl, and they're able to like be dispersed in other places. So yeah, koi are damn cool, and let's move on to the rest. It's my favorite fish. She won't leave the rest alone. And why they're flooding over here, I have no idea. Yeah, this place has Jaws posters as well, proving once again how cool it is. Shark Night 3D, Swamp Shark, Toxic Shark, Shark Attack. Yeah, all the iconic shark films. And you've got a bunch of really cool tanks over here. Like they're all aquascapes. Got this one and this. I'm not sure what kind of fish this is. I'm pretty sure that's like a kind of live bearer of some sorts, like probably an endler, but yeah. Over here you've got I think a Trinidadian guppy, or like a kind of like variant of it, at least a fancy bread kind of one. So yeah, as I said, this one's probably pregnant since its gravid spot is way larger than like a regular, just a tiny black little speck. And the male is chasing the female, and because they're guppies. And yeah, I'm planning to write an entire article about them later on my site when I have the time to go through it. So yeah, I'm not sure what kind of fish these are, but they look like kind of tetras of some sort. Hello. Got blue eyes. Either tetras or killifish. Most likely killifish though. Some of them are killifish, the others are like blue-eyed tetras. And over here you've got a zebra dino just vibing on its own. Probably was like too aggressive. And these guys, they're endlers, like the relatives of guppies, which are another species of live bearer. Fun fact about guppies is that there was a proper full-blown guppy movement in Calcutta, since guppies are able to they give birth every 30 days and they're basically like super themselves making machines. And there was a proper guppy movement in Calcutta, coming back to that, which was detected to used to detect water pollution, since if the guppies are able to survive in the water, it's easily drinkable. And this has saved a lot of lives, I assume. This is a pretty cool tank. I don't see anything in it though. Over here you've got a Corridora catfish and a bunch of neon tetras. Neon tetras, as I said, are charasin fish, which means they come from a family of piranhas and payaras and stuff. But these guys, they're actually pretty social little fish. They like schooling with each other and should be kept in groups of up to 6. And yeah, they've been called neon tetras because they literally glow under UV light, because of that blue fluorescent stripe that traces down their bodies. Yeah, there's nothing in this tank either, but it's just pretty cool to look at. I don't see anything in this either. Oh wait, there's this one little fish over here. I am not sure what kind it is, but it's just pecking about over here. Over here you've got one of my favorite kind of fish. It's also a kind of labyrinth fish or gurami, whatever you would like to call it. And it's a Siamese fighting fish, aka the betta. One alongside the goldfish, this was the most what's it called again? One of the most popular pet fish out there, and the first domesticated fish out of all time. And yeah, they're also called Siamese fighting fish because they used to be used in fights by males were often kept together and made to spar with each other, and while they were bred for fighting, they're also bred for crazy coloration, like this one. And they often hop. They're also labyrinth fish like guramis. Where do you go? We'll go to another pet at a time. So yeah, they're able to breathe outside the water. So as long as their body stays moist, these labyrinth fish are able to breathe outside, and they often hop from puddles to puddles in their native home range to be able to get to new water bodies and avoid predators, which gives people another excuse to plonk them into fish bowls. And they were domesticated by humans in Thailand at first, due to their historical prevalence since they are found in paddy fields, which gives them like an excellent ability. And this is also where people observed their squabbles for territory and started like giving them a reason to fight with each other for amusement, like by putting them with each other. As time passed, this evolved in, this is a sport similar to cockfighting, and it was so popular that the king of Siam, like basically what Thailand used to be called, decided to tax and regulate the sport, like these two fish just fighting with each other. He just decided to regulate that. And these colorful grumpy fish, they were kept by him as well. And these guys can also change their color depending on the like chicklets can do that too, like depending on how stressed they are. And they also have a pretty famous behavior called flaring, which they use to like display intimidation and ways to show off to mates, which means that they flap out their operculum. I don't remember, is that what it's called? Yeah, that. And they also flare out their fins, and they have another kind of coloration called the devil, which means that in which they develop stress stripes, which is basically a horizontal banding along the lateral line of stressed fish, which signifies stress. And people watching, coming back to betta fighting again, these people watching these matches like place their bets not on like which fish won, but on the bravery of the fish that won and how they fought, rather than the injuries inflicted on the opponent fish. And yeah, they came to the aquarium trade after a guy in the 18th century, I think, or 19th, I'm not entirely sure, studied them and submitted like an article calling them Macropodus pugnax, which drew attention to their anal fins and like how they were so big, which is honestly kind of insulting, I guess. I'm not sure. And yeah, this until someone else came along and recognized that Macropodus pugnax is actually like another species of fish. So I renamed them Betta splendens, which is actually kind of a more apt name, considering that bettas were actually like named after a tribe from an ancient warrior tribe, which were like famous for their fighting skills. And yeah, Betta splendens like translates to beautiful warrior. And yeah, they've got like they're also called the designer fish of the aquarium trade, since they have one of the smallest vertebrate genomes ever sequenced. And they can be used to, okay, this is a female right here, you can distinguish her from the egg spot. Right over here, she has shorter fins than the males. But yeah, these guys, they're also been kept in sorority tanks because the females have been like, stories say that they're a lot more tolerant of each other than the males are of each other, and will like attack each other with less enthusiasm. So yeah, they form hierarchies and stuff, but more on the females later. Bettas are colorful enough to give saltwater fish a run for their money. And this one right over here, it's got to be priced a lot, since the reason for this is because these kind of bettas are look like the Thai flag, similar to the Tancho koi which I was talking about. This one resembles the Thai flag, and only the most expensive and valuable of bettas have this kind of finnage with the signature red, white and blue from the Thai flag. I mean, the bettas were originally first only endemic to Siamese fighting fish. I mean, yeah, they were only endemic to Thailand, but eventually spread to the rest of the world. Coming back to the females, where are you? Yeah, I keep like one of these. I've like got like a betta at my house, and yeah, it's a female as well. And the thing is that these guys evolutionarily, they're pretty closely related to like chicklets, which gives them advanced parental care as well, which means that the male being a lab is the primary caretaker of the offspring or like the unborn eggs, At first, he blows bubbles on the top of the surface, creating bubble nests. And these bubble nests are eventually where like the female deposits the eggs and and the male like carefully collects them in his mouth and puts them into his nest, and which aerates them and provides he provides protection for these eggs until they hatch. And females also change their color, and the female plays no part in like the raising of the eggs, and if she acts up way too much, the male's gonna turn around and kill her. And bettas are also like guppies. They're also pretty important in like lab studies and stuff, since they're pretty important when it comes to studying of stuff such as Prozac and medications similar to that. Since when it comes to study of aggression and drug testing, they're pretty useful since their threat displays make it evident when they're angry and when they're not. Speaking of their intelligence, they're pretty smart fish, as I said, relate similarly to cichlids. They're also they're able to associate learning via different stimuli and the effects of drugs, as I said, and not only that, they also show what kind of effects they have on marine life and aquatic organisms, so people can regulate how they trash their antidepressants better. And female bettas, they also got to be studied way more. Where's the female? Yeah, there she is. Yeah, since they have pretty interesting social hierarchies and behaviors, almost rivaling guppies in interestingness. They're more peaceful and easygoing and able to coexist better with each other, unlike the males who literally are at each other's throats the moment they show up. I mean, sorority fish still have occasional cat fights with each other, and they might kill each other, although they're not as violent as the guys. They can live in relative peace with each other. Yeah, they've got an egg spot right over here between their anal fins, this white little grain of sand over here. Yeah, there's a pretty interesting kind of betta called alien betta, which is basically pretty important, which is pretty weird even by betta standards, since bettas have a lot of species. Betta splendens is just one of them. There are about 70 species of bettas, I think, ranging from bettas forgot the name of it. There are a lot of different kind of bettas. So some of them, these guys can hybridize with each other. Not only splendens kind of bettas, look at this one. Yeah, they can hybridize with each other. And these hybrids are often called alien bettas because they are. Although the weird part about these aren't just the hybrids, they're the fact that these hybrids can reproduce on their own. So a typical hybrid, bettas are hybrids. Hybrids are usually sterile. Take a look at mules, for instance. Mules kind of babies, they're sterile. But female alien bettas are occasionally able to produce more fertile offspring. But all these fertile offspring are female, and therefore furthering their mixed up bloodline. And lot of bettas you'll find out there, almost all of them you find in the pet store. None of them are true Siamese fighting fish. Siamese fighting fish are basically aggregate of all of the bettas you'll find in the pet store have a little bit of alien genes in them. So this kind of trait of females being able to produce more female offspring is also prevalent in some species of animals such as the Bengal cats. and which are basically like a hybrid of domestic cats and Asian leopard cats. And the first generation of male offspring are unfertile, but females are able to procreate. So yeah, female givers. I mean, there's also a group dynamic between the female and the male beta, since like if a female beta is given a chance to like eavesdrop a fight between two potential mates, yeah, and she observes a male like losing, she's not gonna mate with him. She'd rather be like more interesting to mate with the winning male. But if she doesn't have like she isn't a witness of the fight, she's more likely to mate with both of them. And another fun fact about the female beta is that what you see over here are the you see the vertical lines on this one's body. Yeah, those are actually breeding stripes. Like this one's in contact with males and gets to see them through like the glass. Oh wait, she doesn't. It's like blocked off over here. But yeah, she's the signifying of like the stripes on her body means that she's ready to breed and is probably like carrying eggs and is gravid. But anyhow, that's when female betas are like neutered, and I mean, what's it called for females? Like spaying. A third of females with like their ovaries, when their ovaries are removed, they're like able to regenerate one, but which is interesting in itself. But the remaining 2/3 of females, they develop like male primary and secondary characteristics, such as like development of testes and stuff. So yeah, these girls basically changed into boys. And not only that, these females turned males were also able to breed with biologically female betas, and they were able to produce like healthy and normal offspring. I mean, except for the fact that these offspring like created from two females or almost exclusively female, and very few of them are females. The reason for this is like, unlike humans, a beta's gender, sex is determined by not only by genetics but also by hormonally. Like their gender also comes down to hormones, since injecting females with testosterone also turned them into males. Well, it was genetically analyzed, the like reasoning behind all of this. Their genetics don't always line up to what their gender actually like shows in their bodies. For instance, there have been a portion of female fish possessing the male XY genome, whereas there have been that are like actually whereas there are a bunch of guy fish that are like possessing the female XX chromosomes. So yeah, basically some females were genetically male, while some males were genetically female. Well, most sterilized fish from the experiment were like XX females, some of them were XY females. And since they were able to go back to their femaleness when they were spayed. And the interesting part about this is that, what are you doing there, shrimp? Yeah, the interesting part about this is that this kind of behavior like of sex changing and stuff has only been documented in beta splendids, like the domesticated ones. Also, humans may have a part to play on like the sexual dimorphism characteristics, and like introducing a new gene to betas just by domesticating them and stuff. But yeah, the fact that cichlids themselves, it's also like some fish, like here's another female right over here. Well, it's not a female, I don't see the eggs. Well, this is actually a placat male beta fish. It can be called a placat because in its native language it basically translates to biting fish. And fun fact, betas are also the national animal of Thailand. And they're called placats due to the fact that they've been specifically bred to fight, and they move faster than the usual beta due to their like shorter finnage. And yeah, speaking of fish chromosomes, they're a pretty varied bunch, since some like fish like African cichlids, for instance, the ones I showed before, they have like XY mammal like XY chromosomes, while like Others have like ZW chromosomes, while others have like a combination of both of these. And so yeah, they also have like a lot of different ways in which gender can be decided in fish. Like for flounders, for instance, it's determined by temperature, and for clownfish, they can just flat out change their gender, like being protoandrous hermaphrodites. But yeah, bettas are pretty cool fish. Over here you find a juvenile scat, I think. Scat are basically also called butterfish. And they're also like, their home range consists of like estuaries and stuff. And while the adults are like generally like completely saltwater, the what's it called again? The juveniles often thrive in like saltwater population. And here's a rare like variant of mollies called the Mickey Mouse molly. I mean, you see the Mickey Mouse symbol it has on its tail, right? So they're pretty coveted kind of mollies. So yeah, adult scat are completely saltwater and marine species, whereas juvenile scats live in either estuaries or like partly can either live in complete fresh water, or they live in what's it called again? Sometimes like they can live in barely brackish water. Don't know what this fish right here is. This is just a run-of-the-mill guppy. This is a super beautifully planted tank, although it has nothing in it. Over here you have a bunch of rasboras. There's harlequin rasbora right here, and no idea what these ones are. I think it's a Congo tetra. I'm not sure. What are these guys doing? So yeah, I've got a bunch of platies right over here, the Mickey Mouse kind, the usual kind, and you've got these Siamese algae eaters right over here. They provide like a very good job in cleaning up algae and stuff in the tank, although they need to be fed wafers. There's one right over here as well. Right over here you have glow light tetras. They look basically like neon tetras, except their stripes orange in color. And yeah, no idea what these ones are right over here, these white fish just mingling around them. I think they're a different color morph, but yeah, not a lot to say about these guys, except that tetras are like a super varied bunch. You've also got a bunch of shrimp right over here, these cherry shrimp just mingling around in the plants. What's over here? I don't think I'm allowed in here. I just walked inside. Ah yes, goldfish once again. I think these ones are Oranda goldfish, since that's what they look like with their wen being slightly big. But I can't be entirely certain. There's a kind of goldfish called a pearl scale goldfish, which like has guanine deposits right on its scales, which give them like pearl like look. But a fact about fish is that the fish scales are often used in like lipsticks and other like cosmetic products, since the guanine in their scales is used for gives them a shiny appearance. So yeah, there are various kinds of goldfish, and the thing about goldfish being invasive pests is that people have been releasing their pet goldfish into like estuaries and stuff, which is basically what like saltwater and freshwater meets. But goldfish, being the resilient little fish they're able to survive that, which they're rapidly building up a tolerance to salinity, which is like a big concern for environmentalists. And yeah, goldfish outside like being pets, they can also be like pests, because being in the wild basically gives them like a license to be to like spread parasites and like kick up sediment and basically be a menace to society. And yeah, goldfish can also be trained by like there are a bunch of scientists who trained goldfish like to expect food at the sound of a bell, and the goldfish showed up late afterwards in the wild like after they did this after 5 months of hearing it. And yeah, Harvard University, like we often give younger generations the shit for like eating Tide Pods and stuff. But wait till you hear this fact that in 1939, 1939, I'm not sure, a bunch of people like had Harvard University students had a fad in which they like swallowed goldfish, and the highest number was like 100, I believe. But yeah, goldfish also have taste buds around on their lips, and yeah, they have taste buds on their lips, and the goldfish also don't have a stomach, and their swim bladders are directly connected to like the like digestive tract, so they're able to like fart out excess air to regulate their buoyancy. And yeah, I've written an entire article about these guys on my site. The link's in the description. Feel free to check that out if you wish. Over here you've got a bumblebee goby and a bunch of young Plecostomus, I believe, and a corridora, like an albino corridora. And right over here, a young Siamese algae eater. Once again, I do not know anything about snails, so I have no idea what kind these are. Someone please tell me. I would love to know in the comments. And these are white mountain cloud minnows. Once again, there's a thing about minnows which sets them apart from other fish is that they're basically like they're cyprinids as well, as I said. They're what was I saying? Yeah, common minnows like this. They've got a special alarm that's released through their skin cells called epidermal club cells. When like the fish is subject to mechanical damage, where'd you go? Yeah, when the fish is subject to mechanical damage, they give an alarm signal which all the fish in their order are able to like detect and like flee away from the threat. And this is a lot of fish, considering that 68% of all freshwater fish are actually minnows, and they'll evacuate the area when they recognize it. So yeah, fish that have never even met a predator will be able to learn how to fear it thanks to the pheromone secretions given out by like other minnows. Over here you've got a bunch of fancy guppies and this black shrimp right over here. Another bunch of alligators, and over here you see leopard corridoras. I don't see these guys a lot. Yet again, I barely have like any fish shops near my place. Like I was just like coming back from college and I see this shop and I'm like, hey, I'm stuck in the rain anyways, let's just check this out. So yeah, more algae eaters. No idea what this one is. Over here you've got like a black moor goldfish. Oh god, it's super dark. A black moor goldfish. It's got like those telescope kind of eyes. I mean, they're one of the easiest fish to recognize. That's why we did it. Hello there, little guy. Yeah, a bunch of chicklets. Talked about these ones. Another chicklet. Another goldfish. No idea why it's kept alone. Looks pretty dejected. Bunch of black moors. Okay, it just swam away from me. I think this is like a snail zone, but like snails are bred or whatever. So yeah, this place it has its stock of things. Super cool place. I absolutely adore it. And yeah, over here you've got like a, oh my god, this thing's stuck right over here. Yeah, thank god I just blew it down. Wonder what it was trying to get away from. So yeah, these guys have an axolotl as well. They're found only in one certain part of Mexico, and I mean, what am I saying? These guys, they are actually a kind of salamander. They're always in a young sort of state, and they usually like are not white in color. They are brown, and they're kind of like they. I think when injected with certain growth hormone, I think thyroxine, I believe, they turn into tiger salamanders, but I'm not sure about that. These guys are able to regenerate their organs, and like they consume each other on a daily basis, and their vision is pretty poor, so like they accidentally chew off with someone else's limb or whatever, and they're able to regenerate parts of their brain as well. This one is a leucostic color morph, I think. I'm not sure. Once again, I do not know anything about stuff other than fish, and it just yawned so big. Hello there. So yeah, over here you have the widow tetras. These guys, they're closely related to like silver dollars, which again are related to piranhas. So yeah, everything boils down to piranhas in the end when it comes to these guys. They're also a glowfish kind of variety. You know, the one I was like in the beginning, I was talking about the zebra danios being glowfish. So these guys are basically like injected with the coral gene, the anemone gene, the jellyfish gene. So they're with bright colors now. Although they of different colors often school together of glowfish, since they are basically the same kind of fish, just different kind of colors. And yeah. A school of zebra, what's it called again? Neon tetras. They're just schooling and being themselves. Over here you've got like I think a juvenile green terror chicklet. My dad used to keep these when I was younger, and as I was saying, chicklets can range from like being docile and like less aggressive compared to the others. There's like angelfish or like discus fish, which are basically like not as aggressive compared to other chicklets. Then there's the effing Jack Dempsey chicklet, which is named after a boxer, so you can guess what the temperament may be like. So yeah, green terrors are a bit on the aggressive side. I'm guessing this one right over here is a juvenile Oscar. Wait, no, those guys have bigger eyes. I'm just guessing this is an Oscar. Like, it looks like an Oscar. It's got the coloration of an Oscar. It's got the looks of an Oscar, so it's got to be an Oscar. Let's see the adults, like, just around the corner. These ones over here, they're golden killifish. Killifish, some species. There's this kind of killifish called the mummy chog, and it's like the tardigrade of vertebrates. Like, okay, that just really rolled off the tongue now, didn't it? So yeah, it's the tardigrade of vertebrates, and this small schooling killifish, not this one, this is just a golden killifish. It can survive in any situation it's thrown in, including like ocean. It's a freshwater fish, but it can survive like oceanic level salinity. Yeah, you're seeing the rainbow coloration because that's just my phone cover, and yeah, including like heavily polluted waters, which can make like other fish it'll just like kill other fish and give them cancer and liver failure and stuff. But the mummy chog thrives and survives and breeds, and this is due to them being able to modify their blood's oxygen binding capacity. And yeah, they can even survive zero gravity situations and live through space flight. Killifish, I'm not sure if golden killifish can do this, but they possess like bifocal vision and are able to see at the top of the water surface and the bottom at the same time, and are used by researchers to study vision and brain aging. Yeah, some of them can also like change their sex. And a mangrove killifish, some kind of killifish, not mangrove. Wait, I think mangrove, never mind. They like get into moist leaf litter and can live under there for like 3 months, breathing through their skin, while their mangrove is drying out. But yeah, this is the adult Oscars I was talking about. These kind of chicklets, they're one of the like best kind of fish you can get. They're like aggressive to everything else, but they're super friendly. Like they can interact with their owners, and some of them have a habit of like rearranging their aquarium decor. For instance, like if you plant stuff around which they can get their fins on, their mouth onto, they will like rearrange their decor to like suit their needs instead. They've got like various color morphs to them as well. Like you can find white Oscars as well. And this over here, I think it's a juvenile snakehead. I'm not sure. Or a bichir. Forgive me, that's actually its name, sorry. Please don't demonetize me. So yeah, I think this is a bichir. And this one over here is a black knife fish. Or I'm not sure if that's a knife fish, but these guys, they've been introduced like into the aquarium trade. And they're popping it off pretty well.
Yeah, we are next to me.
Hello.
About 2 minutes away. Here the service room.
Okay, nothing there in this tank. Over here you find a black and a white Oscar. As I said, they have different color morphs, and these are what the babies look like. Their eyes are huge, in proportion to their body size. And nothing in this tank either. And then we've got this gargantuan Oscar just lying on the bottom. And over here we have nothing as well. What do you have over here? Okay, a bunch of zebra dinos, glowfish, and guppies. I don't see anything over here either. Okay, just a bunch of guppies, harlequin rasboras, and neon tetras. Decorations. I think I'm gonna buy one of these if I have the money, which is a huge if, because I spent it all on food, because that's the way I am. Oscars. No idea. Okay, these guys over here, they're known as ember tetras. They're another kind of tetra, charciform fish, and they like to roam around in schools. And they also have a reputation for getting pretty nippy, and like they're fast swimmers, so you can like keep them with bettas and stuff. And Siamese algae eaters, and 1 second. Huh? What? Bunch of these guys, endlors. You can, and Raminos tetras are here as well, and these Siamese algae eaters. And over here you see a coolie loach. Once again, my dad used to keep this when we were younger. I really liked that fish. Rest in peace. So these are also one of the oddball fish you can have. They're basically a kind of loach. They are usually pretty shy, and you have to keep them in like groups of 6 and stuff. I have no idea what this one's doing here alone. Oh wait, there's one more over here. Never mind, I'm blind. So they look pretty cool. They've got like those typical loach kind of bristles near its mouth. And guppies, yet again, Siamese algae eater. And over here you find these flower horn chicklets. Like these are one of my favorite kind of chicklets. Like, and you won't find them in the wild. They're actually a hybrid between the red parrot and I don't remember the species that went into creating this one, but they're also pretty like cool fish. They're a chicklet. They're meant to be kept alone or with like other large and aggressive chicklets, since they've got this huge growth on their head called a cock by don't judge me or demonetize me. That's what it's called. It's called a cock. It's also called like a caudal notch or something. I don't remember. And the males have it a lot bigger than the females right over here. Like this one over here is female. I'm not sure. It's just got a very deflated head thing. I'm not gonna say the word again and again, just so that you know. And yeah, they're a kind of chicklet. I don't have a lot to say about these guys. Probably gonna write an article on them later. And we've got the bathroom and some plants just on display. There's a terrarium. Do not press this button. Okay, a bunch of other chicklets. Over here you find the zone where like it just rained, so that's why it's super wet. All over here you've got some driftwood, and the entire place is just fell on my head. So we've got guppies in this pond somewhere. I just saw some movement like guppy fry. They're growing up in this. You've got duckweed and some other plants. A zebra dino once again. Get loads of these things right over here. Okay, there's nothing in this tank. It just looks super gorgeous. Got these rocks. And also we've got like the saltwater branch, kind of fish over here. We've got like the domino damselfish, I believe. Like that's what they look like. A royal grama, which, you know, the paranoid fish in Finding Nemo. And right over here you got like a Porcula clownfish. Like that's not exactly Nemo, but kind of Nemo because, well, clownfish are kind of damselfish as well. And look at this poor guy just struggling against the current. But I shouldn't like really be calling these things guys, since clownfish, when it comes to Finding Nemo, Marlin would realistically be trying to find the sun for all the wrong reasons, since in clownfish society it's the males and the female. The males can easily change their gender to become females, and they usually do this when stimulated by like hormonal changes triggered by societal stuff, since the top of their hierarchy is usually occupied with the top female and the top male. And you know what, I think I should sit down for a bit. Been standing the whole time. So yeah, about Porcula clownfish. They're protandrous hermaphrodites, so they're able to change their gender as when the top female dies, the top male, who is usually like in second in hierarchy to her and her mate, he usually like changes his gender to become the top female, while the lower ranking male, he becomes the next top male. So yeah, if in Finding Nemo Coral was killed, then Marlin would change into Nemo's mom and would try to find his son for all the wrong reasons, and it would turn out to be some kind of fishy harem story instead of like the wholesome story we've got over here. And these guys have got a bunch of like sea stars here as well. No idea. I do not know about invertebrates to save my life. Don't know what this kind of damselfish over here is. Damselfish are pretty interesting on their own, since like there's a kind of damselfish called the Altrichthys damselfish, which can like basically provides one of the few reef fish that provide parental care to their offspring. And they basically like chicklets. Some species of chicklets like the discus and stuff, they what's it called again, they feed their young off body mucus, which they secrete, and they're so good at their parental duties that some species of fish have been taking advantage of them, and these fish also adopt other fish, like fry, which aren't their own or of the same species because brood parasites. So yeah, they adopt children that are not their own, and this has been documented in like 4 species of damselfish. As opposed to like there are more than like 200 species of damselfish out there, and only 4 of them provide parental care. So yeah, the difference between us, coming back to clownfish. Yeah, coming back to you. There are like porcula clown, true porcula and false porcula clownfish. The difference between these guys can be spotted by counting their like dorsal fin spines and basically like finding out whether they're like porcula, false or true porculas. Like for instance, the Finding Nemo fish, that was an Ocellaris, aka the false porcula clownfish. And yeah, another difference between them is temperament. True porcula clownfish are way more aggressive than Ocellaris clownfish, like at least from what I've heard. And there's a lot like there's more like black banding in the in the true porcula clownfish than in the like Ocellaris clownfish. Like you see the black bands over here. This over here is a color morph of the regular kind of clownfish. This was, but yeah. So we found Nemo. Now we move on to the inverts. Over here we've got this hermit crab. Yeah, hermit crabs don't actually have their own shell. They like crawl into any other shell they find and can fit. And they have this ritual like near the shore in which they like line up and basically exchange shells with each other, with the biggest crab like getting over and finding the shell that fits them, and like the smaller one just going into the bigger one's shoes. It's pretty cool. Over here you've got a cleaner shrimp. Yeah, these guys, they're basically like the companions of like the cleaner wrasse and stuff that make it their profession to like clean fish from like the external parasites and like parasites in their mouth and gills. So yeah, you've got this one right over here. I do not know how to speak about these since I do not know about shrimp, other than that they make pretty tasty meals for my fish, either accidentally or by not. Okay, once again some guppies, very cool tankscape. Over here you've got one of my favorite fish. This over here is a honey gourami, and this over here is a blue gold gourami, I believe. No, not blue gold, I'm not sure. And these over here are silver dollars. Like they're the more like less aggressive version of the piranhas, and they also don't eat flesh, so no need to fear from them. Once again, Raminos tetras. And over here you've got like one of the most popular cichlids that are sold in the freshwater aquarium trade, and they're angelfish, like Altum angels to be precise. Not Altum angels, scalar angels. Altum angels are the wild kind of variety. There are 3 kinds of angelfish sold in like the trade: the Altum angel, the Pterophyllum scalar, Pterophyllum basically means like wing finned or something, I'm not sure, but yeah, they basically provide like parental care like all cichlids to their young. They live in like groups, and they get pretty freaking huge when they're fully grown, and their home range is the Amazon forest. And this one's just getting bodied by this Raminos right over here. And yeah, despite them having feelers, they can't exactly taste with them. And some people say that they're kind of community fish. Well, this is true when they're younger. When they're older, they become like more territorial. Like the males will fight with each other because, well, males, and the females will fight to like protect their young and stuff, since they're mouth brooders and do that kind of stuff. But yeah, over here you've got like, look at them just coming towards me. Hello there. Over here you have like blood parrot cichlids. These guys were created from breeding the Gold Severum and the Midas chicklets. And just look at their little dirty faces. They've been bred like that to like have no strong jaws, like a deformed jaw shape. And they're not to be confused with like the saltwater parrot fish, which are the kind that, you know, accidentally ingest coral, shit out sand. But yeah, unlike them, these guys cannot change their gender. They're kind of chicklet. And yeah, they're super cute. Like, just look at them faces. Do you see a single brain cell like between those eyes? So yeah, I'm a fangirl of these kind of fish. And yeah, there's a kind of blood parrot called the jelly bean blood parrot, which is I'm personally not a fan of, since that variant has its caudal fin highly like it's not present. So basically these guys, they just live on without their caudal and basically look like that Pokemon, what's it called again, Alomomola, which I thought was an evolution of Love-Disc at first, but it's not, because cursive Game Freak. So yeah, these fish are cool, and so are the gouramis, just being over here. Yeah, you've got tanks of different sizes. And what's over here? What been over here? I don't see anything in this other than a bunch of snails. I think this is like I'm not going to use my chicklet identification skills. I am really bad at identifying chicklets. Over here you see lyre-tail mollies and a bunch of guppies. Lyre-tail mollies are another kind of molly, which, as the name suggests, the tails are shaped like lyres. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about these guys. Sorry. Wait, am I apologizing to those fish? And there's a cricket skeleton here for some reason. And that fish just came and got it. What kind of fish this is? It looks like a damsel fish, but I'm not entirely certain. And it's getting torn to shreds. Rest in peace, grasshopper. This is a super gorgeous tank scape. And I'm not sure what kind of chicklets these are. I think I'm going to make another part to this video entirely about chicklets after I do my homework, since this video is kind of made impromptu. Yeah, these are the angels which I was talking about. These are the Altum angelfish. They're distinguished by their like concavish heads and like differing colors. These are the wild kind of angelfish, like the ones you'll find in their home range. They're absolutely gorgeous fish. Take care of their young, are less aggressive than most other chicklets, although they can be jerks. But yeah, they're still pretty gorgeous, and I'm a fan of them. Trying to get one when like I get my own house and like move out and I'm able to afford them. Over here is a female like flower horn. There are two kinds of flower horns. One of them has like spots on them, the others don't. Just a golden base. And what do you have here? Like, I hope there's something over here in the end of this dark hallway. Okay, nothing over here. In this place, not been over here. Okay, silver dollars and this silver dollar express. Such a cute tank, love this so much. And we've got this table. And here we have the adult scat. Like, you know, I showed you a juvenile scat. These guys are purely marine now. Like, they literally, only for breeding time, they come into estuaries. Hey, stop running away from me. And yeah, they're also called butterfish, as I said. And yeah, you'll find them, they're basically brackish water fish if it comes to it. And there's a very squished up sea star. Yeah, I do not know what happened to it. Looks like it's been torn to shreds. Rest in peace. Oh, is that a freaking alligator gar? Okay, so about these fish, they're the largest bony fish in North America, and they're basically what you'll get if alligators had fins. Like these guys also have very unique kind of scales called ganoid scales, and they look like alligator skin. But I'm so happy to see this one. And yeah, they're coated in enamel and are basically super tough. And yeah, these guys are apex predators. The family of gars is a very ancient kind of family, and they've been around for like millions of years. And look at this one just slowly making its way towards me. Hello. They are regarded as a pest fish, but they're also like, but they've made and were hunted and persecuted for a long time, but they've made their way into like fishing in the game fishing kind of setting. And they're carnivorous and piscivorous. They usually eat like a lot of other fish, but sometimes like birds and like small mammals make their way onto this one's diet as well. And they've got like super sharp teeth, 2 rows of them I believe. I'm not sure, don't go by what I say. I'm not an ichthyologist, just an enthusiast. And oh god, I hate this so much. One sec. So yeah, on to alligator gar. There are 7 species of gar that like exist as of now. And they've got a special kind of digestive system as well. Like they've got this thing called the spiral intestinal something, which they only find in the elasmobranchs and stuff, and other like super primitive kind of fish like coelacanths and all. But yeah, they're also really cool fish. One of the monster kind of fish that you don't really want to keep in an aquarium, since how huge and aggressive they get. They also like, you can see its scales are like super shiny. That's because enamel, as I said. They all have the elasmoid. They also are air breathers, but their mechanism for air breathing differs from bettas and like other air breathing fish, since they've got like this thing called the pneumal pore, which allows them to like gulp air from the surface, although it's not a labyrinth organ. And yeah, you guys are pretty cool. That's all I gotta say. Ooh, Splashy Fins got like a food thing as well. Oh my god, this place is perfect. What's over here? Okay, nothing. Burger. No smoking. Still there are a bunch of cigarettes. Sloan's cat. I mean, the name scat's kind of weird since the study of poop is scatology. So I'd rather just call this the butterfish. Some species of scat are poisonous since the dorsal fins contain like poison. I mean, a venom, I think. But yeah, only green scats possess that. What's it over here? Maybe I'm just not allowed over here. Okay, it's a prayer room. Okay, this is the owner of this place. His work is amazing. And what would you like to say about this entire place? Like, I'm so sorry, I don't have anything to ask.
It's the best place to spend time in Bangalore.
Yes, it's amazing. Please, like, come over here if you live in Bangalore, or even if you don't live in Bangalore. I don't really know. It's worth it. And that's all I gotta say. So, end of stream, I guess.